Gary Baysinger is an American author with a deep connection to North Yorkshire, where he spent his teenage years. He recently released a historical fiction novel which vividly captures the Great War era in Yorkshire. And Gary is with us here. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Toby. How are you?
Excellent, thank you. So, are you able to tell us a bit more about your own personal connection to Yorkshire and what kind of inspired you to set your novel there?
Absolutely. I lived there as a teenager for a couple years in the town of Harrogate. Have you ever been there?
I've never been to Harrogate. No, I don't think so.
It's about 20 miles from Leeds. Yeah, I moved over there when I was 15 and went to a British school. I had to wear a school uniform and do all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a culture shock, and it took me a while to adjust. But in the end, I really enjoyed my time there. Yorkshire is a wonderful place, and the people there are just delight. Once they get to know you, I think your first impression is they can be a little gruff, but once they get to know you and they like you, you got a friend for life.
The book was partly inspired by the 1969 film Oh, What a Lovely War. So, was there a scene in that film that kind of sparked your curiosity and led you to write the book?
Yeah, it's a strange film. It's a musical about World War One,
Yeah.
which is odd, but I guess it had been a very popular stage play in Britain in the 50s. And in the movie, they use the songs they sing, the soldiers sing, are like popular songs from that era, but the soldiers put their own lyrics to them, which tended to be ironic or bawdy or dark. But anyway, there's a scene in the movie where they show the Christmas truce of 1914, which you may be familiar with. The
Oh,
British
yes.
and German troops came out of their trenches and they met in the middle in no man's land and exchanged booze and cigarettes and sweets, whatever they had. And they took the day off from killing because it was Christmas Day. And in the scene, and there's only like about a 5-minute scene in the movie, one of the German soldiers says, before the war, I was living in Suffolk and I left behind a motorcycle and a girl. I liked how he said motorcycle first, but the British soldier said, wait, you had a girl in Suffolk? He said, yeah. And he shows him a picture of the girl, and they were impressed that he had a girl. And so I'm watching this and I'm thinking, wait a minute, this German soldier 6 months ago was living in Britain with these British people. And now here he is out in northern France and he's trying to kill these same people. I think that's interesting. And who is this guy? Who was the girl? How did they meet? What was the courtship like? Did he survive the war? Did they ever get together? But it was just a 5-minute scene and it was over. And I thought, well, I had all these questions. So I thought, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to answer those questions. And I'm not really familiar with Suffolk, but I lived in Yorkshire. I said, well, let's set it in Yorkshire because I kind of know the place.
Yes.
So that's where I said, okay, let's make it in Yorkshire. And off I went.
You say you kind of know the place. So, were there any specific memories or experiences from Yorkshire that kind of influenced your portrayal of both Harrogate and the counties of Yorkshire?
I think the thing that stuck with me was what a beautiful place it is. I was just there back in May. I was visiting some old friends for the first time in decades, and I'd forgotten like what a beautiful town it is and what Yorkshire. It rains a lot in Britain. You may have noticed that.
Yes.
But in a place like Yorkshire, when the sun comes out and it's a nice day and it's all these multiple shades of green, you don't want to be anywhere else. That's the place. So I just kind of wanted to capture what a beautiful place it was, and then try and capture a little bit of the kind of the spirit of the people because they are unique in Yorkshire. But so I wanted to kind of capture a little bit of that. Those are I don't know if it was specifics, but just kind of the generalities of what it's like in Yorkshire. And then I mentioned in the book, I also mentioned the Great Yorkshire Show because that's a big deal. The big fair they have every year, agricultural show. Yeah. So just some things, and then there were just bits and pieces I remember from the town and the little towns nearby. That's kind of what I was going for. Just kind of get a general feeling of what it's like to live in Yorkshire.
And you mentioned you were back there in May. So how did it feel to return after all this time? I mean, was it your first time back since you were a teenager?
No, I came back about 10 years after I left, and then this would be a super long story, so I won't go into it. But I came back in the summer of 1990, because my parents had moved back there, and I spent about 6 weeks there just hanging out. It was great to see mom and dad. I could stay at their place for free, and watching the World Cup on television every night. It was a good time. But I looked up an old friend I hadn't seen in 10 years, and it was great to see her. And then when I came back just a few months ago, I reached out to my friend and said, hey, I'm coming back over. And she said, well, why don't you come stay with me and my husband? So I hadn't seen her in 3 decades. And so it was a little weird, but it was great to see her. It was, and we'd connected on Facebook about 5 years ago. So just going in and seeing her, it was like we'd just seen each other a couple of weeks before. We just kind of hit it off right away. And it was wonderful to see her, to meet her husband. And I spent 3 days. I looked up a couple other old friends I hadn't seen, and we went down to the pub and drank some beers and told some lies about the old days. It was just great to be back, and then my wife and I were in Britain for 2 weeks, and I think it rained twice, which is unbelievable. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was just a great trip all around. We spent most of our time up in Scotland, which probably nice. Where you're from, right?
Yes. And I think it's just started raining now.
Yeah, and it won't stop till like next May, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, we had a great trip. It was just a wonderful time in Britain. Everybody was wonderful that we met. Saw some really cool things. And I ate some haggis when I was up in Scotland. So that was
nice.
Cool. Yeah, it was good.
When you were in Scotland and other places in Britain that weren't Yorkshire, did that inspire you as well, give you a kind of general feel of the place?
Well, the thing that I noticed was when we were traveling around, because we rented a car for a bit, and it seems like every little town or village we went to, there was a memorial to World War I. I mean, even though how small it was.
Yeah.
And I remember we stopped in the village of Ullapool to take the ferry over to the Isle of Lewis, and we looked at this memorial, and I'm counting the names, and there were about 50 names on this memorial, and this is a village of like 1,500 people. That's like 3% of the population. That's a staggering number. And every little village we went to had a memorial to World War I. There's one in Harrogate too, a nice big one. But it just really drove home, like, this war was a huge deal, especially for people in Britain. The number of lives that were lost, it just really drove it. And that trip really kind of drove it home. Like, this is a huge deal here. This is a big deal. America came into the war late, so it wasn't as big a deal. But this is, like maybe the big event of the 20th century for Great Britain. But it was amazing. It just blew my mind.
Absolutely. And writing a book about this, as you mentioned, we have a memorial in every town, every village. It's kind of a constant reminder of the past, I suppose, and we sort of maybe need that.
Do you need it? I don't know. When I wrote the story, I wasn't thinking on those terms. I thought, I just got an idea for a story, I'm going to put it out there. But like I said, when I was in Britain and I'm seeing, like, this is a big deal, like, wow, okay. I hadn't really thought of that. To me, it was just a story, and I was interested in, World War I and World War II, and I'm thinking, wow, this might have an appeal more so in Britain than in here.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We'll see.
Well, what are you working on at the moment? Do you have any plans for future books?
Yeah, I have another book. It's coming out September 20th. And this book that I just put out, the one we're talking about, A Kind of Homecoming, it's a bit of a prequel to this other book, which focuses more into World War II and before, during, and after World War II. It's a family saga. It's a multi-generational saga.
Yeah.
The books there is some overlap in some of the characters, but they're standalones.
And in the meantime, where are we able to find this book, A Kind of Homecoming?
Well, you can get it on Amazon, or you can go to my website. That's GaryBaysingerAuthor.com, and it's BAYSINGER. But yeah, it's on Amazon right now. I will probably go wide with it at some point and put it on others. But it's, I'm self-publishing, so I'm kind of figuring out the whole how to publish a book kind of a thing.
Excellent. Well, many thanks for talking to us today. It's been great to have you here.
Nice talking to you, Toby.